All right, so welcome to StoryMaps, Conveying Your Brownfield Story. I'm Rebecca Oddie. I'm the statewide Brownfield coordinator at the Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality. So this webinar came about as I discovered different brownfield programs that were using StoryMaps to highlight their successes and their progress and really market the program to entities that would benefit from it. I kind of wanted to know the who, what, where, and why of how all this worked. So I figured I would start talking to folks and then thought, other people might be interested in this. So let's set up a webinar, be able to ask questions. So today's webinar, somewhat informal. We really encourage interaction. Feel free to ask your questions as we go along. We really want to make sure that you get the information you need to move forward if this is something that might benefit your program. Because one of the things we have found with Brownfields, it's a wonderful program that not many people know about. So one of the challenges we've had is how to market it. And in just looking at this, it's an easy way to set it up online, to be able to market the program to developers, to municipalities, to elected officials, the folks that need to know about this program and how it can benefit their communities. All right. Okay, so just a few logistics. As I mentioned, the webinar is being recorded. We will post it on the LDEQ YouTube page once the recording is ready. And then I'll send out a link to the recording once it's available. Give us about a week for that, just to give us time to make sure we download the recording, get it kind of ship shape, and then be able to post it. Okay. So again, we want this to be interactive and address your questions along the way. So if you do have a question, go ahead and put that in the Q&A. It helps us, make sure we don't miss it. Sometimes the chat, if people start going back and forth on a thread, it can get a little crowded. So if you have a specific question, please put that in the Q&A. We'll also try to stop along the way for some questions. You can raise your hand if you want to ask a verbal question. So just go ahead and do that. If I do not see your hand, put a thing in the Q&A to say, hey, my hand is raised, and then I can know to go over and check to make sure. And then again, we've got the chat box open, so it's a more interactive experience. So you can use that for general comments. If there's another attendee you want to send a message to, you can use that for that. But again, if you have a specific question, the Q&A is your best bet. Okay. So one of the things we hear a lot in Louisiana, and I think in EPA Region 6 for our brownfield groups, we have a lot of great brownfield projects, but we tend to just kind of get the project done and then move on to the next one. So we don't always do a great job of telling our story and promoting our successes. So basically, we need to be a little bit better about telling others about our accomplishments. So StoryMaps is one way to help promote your Brownfields program, which can also help with your outreach effort, enrolling more sites in your program, interacting with relevant stakeholders like community groups, elected officials, and redevelopment partners, and helping them to better understand the program. One note, so today we're going to talk about ArcGIS StoryMaps. It's one of the most popular programs that people have been using lately, so that's why we're highlighting it. We are not promoting this above any other kind of programs that do this. That's our disclaimer. This is just the one that our folks have the experience with and seems to be the most popular at the time. I think possibly someone from KSU Tab might be doing a webinar in the future about using some Google Maps or Google Earth to do something similar. So be on the lookout for that if you want to, see what your options are. So not necessarily promoting ArcGIS in general, but just kind of presenting this as one potential option. We're going to go over kind of the whys and the whats, like why did you look into StoryMaps, what did you do to put this together? And then we're going to talk a little bit about the hows and give you some demonstration on how this actually works. But just note, it's not an in-depth tutorial on StoryMaps, but we do have links to tutorials and more in-depth how-to information at the end. So today's webinar just kind of focused on giving you a basic understanding of StoryMaps, how it can benefit your Brownfields program or other programs as well, and kind of giving you a head start moving forward. Okay, so let's get started with some introductions. So Savannah Richards is an environmental scientist, project manager with the Voluntary Remediation and Brownfields Program with the New Mexico Environmental Department's Groundwater Quality Bureau. You have to read all that one. She used the free version of StoryMaps and is kind of coming at the perspective of someone who has a little bit of GIS knowledge, but is not necessarily a GIS expert, and also one with a more limited budget, let's say, for ArcGIS. So Savannah, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. It's awesome to be on this webinar. This is my first webinar, so bear with me. I'm a little nervous, but I'm really excited to just share the information that I've learned about the ESRI StoryMap Builder. So thank you, Rebecca, for organizing this.
Great, thank you. All right, next we have Madeline Dillner. She is the Brownfield Program Project Coordinator with the Oklahoma Corporation Commission. Madeline has a GIS background and will be providing the perspective of a more advanced user. Okay, let's be honest. She's a GIS nerd who has extensive experience in GIS. So she's kind of coming at it from that. And she used the paid version of StoryMaps and a more advanced resources. So Madeline, would you like to tell folks a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I just saw the comment from Brooke in the chat that says, yes, the GIS nerds, yes. So I started with the Corporation Commission in 2012 as a GIS intern, and I got into the Brownfield program there in 2013. So I've been kind of the GIS person who's more morphed into brownfields over the years. And I was lucky enough that the Corporation Commission, we have an organizational ArcGIS account. So if anybody knows what that means, you could probably do the stuff that I'm doing. So I'm really excited to be here. I think this is going to be great.
Yeah. All right, and rounding things out, we were trying to find a local person who had done StoryMaps. And I checked with our Brownfield grantees, and in Acadiana Planning Commission, Chad Lacombe, for those who know him, connected us with Alicia Wilt. So Alicia, okay, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, Alicia. She recently came on as a GIS analyst at Acadiana Planning Commission, which is in Lafayette, Louisiana. She used StoryMaps extensively in her past experience with the Forest Service in Lassen County, which is California, and with the Lafayette Consolidated Government. So she's providing the perspective of a local brownfield program and one that's just getting started with StoryMaps specifically for brownfields. And I have to say, working with Alicia, oh my gosh, she has so many tips and tricks and interesting ways she's employed StoryMaps. It's really been interesting working with her and seeing those different ideas. So Alicia, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm Alicia, and I'm pretty familiar with the ESRI suite of the website of things. So I kind of was brought on Acadiana Planning Commission to kind of enhance their GIS with the web, being that that's growing. So I'm pretty familiar with the StoryMaps, and I'm so happy to share information with all you guys.
And she has good ideas of how to get data from people that you need to put these together. That's what I really liked. And finally, we wanted to let Elizabeth Reyes, who is our EPA project officer, she's actually going to be doing this webinar again in May, just in case for folks that missed it. So Elizabeth, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Rebecca. Again, my name is Elizabeth Reyes, and I work in the RCRA Grants and Brownfields Program at EPA Region 6. I am the coordinator, state and tribal coordinator for 128A grant program. It's a Brownfields program. So again, thank you, Rebecca, for the invitation. At first I was like, why did you invite me? But I'm glad you did, because this is definitely a learning experience. I am not a GIS nerd, but I'm here open to learn, and also for you to, everybody to meet me. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask on the chat. And thank you very much.
Great. Yeah, I think a lot of people get that, most of us that are in brownfields, we like the projects, but marketing isn't necessarily our forte. So we all kind of get that look, when we talk about marketing. But what I liked about this was it was an easy way to show our successes that seemed very doable. Okay. Okay, so first, to start us off, we're going to have each speaker kind of go through their own story map, help you get a feel for really what we're talking about. So Savannah, we're going to start with you. If you want to go ahead and share your screen and just give us a feel for New Mexico's story map.
Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, I just shared it. You guys should be able to see the NMED success stories story map page. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is the New Mexico Brownfields story map that just highlights some of our past success stories. So just to give you a little background, I've only been working for the New Mexico Brownfields program for a short time. I started, I believe, in May 2018. And when I started, when you start any new job, you try to get caught up on the projects that have been completed and what have we done in the past. And for me, it was hard to find all the information in one place. And then when I started finding it, I thought, wow, our program has done so many amazing projects in the past. We need to kind of like shout it from the rooftop and like show people, show the public, like brag a little bit about these projects. And I thought, well, how can we do this? And then I knew Madeline from when just from being in Brownfields, and I used to work in Oklahoma, and I started seeing, what my colleagues were doing, like Madeline and some other people in Oklahoma and across the country were doing these story maps. So I decided to just try it. And this is what I came up with. So I'm going to scroll through it, and hopefully, I know there might be a little bit of a delay, but you can see this is my title page, and I just have some beautiful pictures that my coworkers have taken of some of our sites. And I wanted to be really simple, just keep it real simple for the public and for anyone who just doesn't know about brownfields. And so I offered the definition, the EPA definition, and then also, just set it up for, here are some of our success stories, and you can scroll through and look at them, person who's visiting our website. So I chose the format that you have a success story, and then you have a slideshow kind of for each success story. And the way that I formatted mine was, you can see this little arrow to the right here. And I'm actually going to, I'm going to share the link. I'll share the link to the story map with you all so that you can look at it in your own web browser. But you see that this is a slideshow embedded in the story map website here. And for each one of my sites, I created, okay, this is the location. It's very simple. Like, this is the location. This is where it is. You can scroll in and out of these maps. And then I like to follow with, like a history of the site. If I could find any photos online, historical photos, I like to include those. And then I did this for all of my success stories that I could find in our files. I tried to just gather the information and really tell the story of what the site was, what the community is, what the contamination is. If there are any maps from the reports that show the layout of the site, I would try and include those. And then, you know, the stories all kind of, my slideshows that are embedded in my story map all kind of go the same way. You start out with the location, the history, then kind of the decline, and then I like to go into the assessment that was funded either by EPA or by our state program. And then I like to go into the remediation if there was any, and then the redevelopment. So all of my success stories are kind of, they all flow that same way. And I try to tell the same format, use the same format for each one of my stories, that each one of my projects that's embedded in my story map. So here's another one that you can see for Luna Lodge in Albuquerque, you know, again, with the historic photos and the history. This one's really cool because, you know, you really get to see the photos are really great for this site. So high quality photos. Some of my photos are low, some of them are high quality, but all of them tell the same story. You know, same type of story, different property. I think I have about 10 projects that are embedded as slideshows in my story map. So I'll just, you know, you can scroll through, and like I said, the slideshows are all formatted the same way, and you scroll through them. This is very simple. And my part of the panel is just to let you know that if I can do this, like anyone can do this. I promise. It's not my version of story maps and how I've used story maps is very accessible and very easy, even if you don't know how to use ArcMap or ESRI products. So I'll stop there, and I'm going to share the link to the story map in the chat.
Savannah, I've already.
Okay, awesome.
The link to Savannah and Madeline's story maps are in there. And I will get to Alicia's in just a second. Did you mention how many sites you've included so far, and about how much time has it taken you to complete? How much does it really take to complete one story?
I think I have about 7 or 8 of our Brownfield success stories included in our story map, and each one of these slideshows probably took me a few hours to get the information together, and then probably a few more hours to set up the slideshow. But that's only because sometimes it's hard for me to find where all of our information is stored. So it takes time to locate all the pictures and get the information from a report and kind of condense it down to just 2 sentences. Like, you know, that can take some time, but I would say for each slideshow, a few hours of planning and then actually creating it.
Okay, great. All right, thank you for that overview for New Mexico. Madeline, would you like to talk about the Oklahoma Corporation Commission's story map? And that link is also in the chat.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. All right, let me share. Looks like I'm going to steal it from Savannah. So yes. Okay. All right. So I'm hoping my internet is good enough that by now you guys can all see my Brownfields Program story map for the Corporation Commission. Looks like, yeah, I'm getting some nods. Cool. So this story map I created probably 3 years ago now, basically to be a replacement for the Word document we were using as our public record of all of our brownfield sites that I believe it's required by our grant, but it's definitely required by our state brownfields rules to list all of the sites and various information about them. And honestly, I was tired of updating the Word document, and I was pretty familiar with GIS stuff. And by that time, I think ArcGIS Online had started to become more user-friendly and a little more popular. And I was like, hey, I've heard of story maps at several conferences I've been at. So let me just take a crack at making a story map. And so I started off with actually a different story map than this. And I was using one that had little tabs for each of my brownfield sites. And it turned out it had a limit of 30 tabs, and I had more than 30 sites. So when we went to that 31st site, I had to find a new format to do story maps, and that's what you're looking at right now. And it just has kind of ballooned into kind of almost like a website replacer for the Brownfields program. It's a one-stop shop for all of our information. And we do have some story maps that I will show you, or sorry, not story maps, success stories that I'll show you also. But this is called a StoryMap journal. It's kind of a quote unquote legacy format story map, whereas Savannah's is smooth and sleek and it will look great on your mobile phone. This one will not. It is a little clunky when you try to do it on your phone, but it looks great on a desktop. And that's what I envisioned it for originally. So just so you know, a few differences between them. The StoryMap journal has, if you notice these little dots over on the side here, these are all different pages. And as you scroll through the map, you see all the different pages change automatically. You have that kind of left side, like text stage. And then on the right side, you have a main stage where you could put images or maps, or you can embed websites, all sorts of cool things. So the first page is just a little bit of background about the Brownfield program, what we do, what we can't work on, and what we can. And this picture over here is one of our new Okima sites for our assessment grant. When it flips to the second page, this is where we house like our story maps. You'll see that in a second. But on the right side, if you're more familiar with ArcGIS Online, I don't know if you guys want to put in the chat like yay or nay, whether you do use ArcGIS products currently or whether you're looking to getting into them. So this is a dashboard that's embedded in my story map. So it's an operations dashboard. If you want to write down the exact name, it's an app that is living inside the story map now. That just shows some statistics about the sites that we've worked on. And if you scroll down through this page a little more, you'll notice the dashboard stays still. It's there. You can zoom in and out of this map. You can click these things while you're scrolling over here. So they're kind of independent of each other, but this dashboard is tied to this page in the journal. And here's where we keep our success stories just listed out here on the left side. And if I click on one of these, it'll open up. Oh, my little zoom bar is hiding my tabs. Okay, it'll open up a story map that looks like Savannah's. And so this is how I do our success stories. I have them all individually in the kind of story map that Savannah's using. But I have a picture of the site, a little bit of a quick, too long didn't read version of the site, site summary. I've embedded a map. It looks like the little rectangle around my property isn't working, so that makes me sad. I'll fix that later. But we talk about the assessment and the cleanup for each property. Talk a bit about the redevelopment, have some nice pictures in there. And then at the very end of each success story, I have a little blurb about the return on Brownfield's investment, which is just basically the money stuff. And then at the end, there's a project timeline in case anybody is scrolling through the story maps and they're like, oh, hey, that looks like my property. I wonder how long it took them to do this. And so there's some information there about that. And I'll link the certificate so people can see institutional controls. You can embed PDFs, maps, slideshows like Savannah did. You can embed websites. And as you can see here, maybe you can see the websites, if they've got a video on them, they show up if you embed them with certain settings. We just have project partners down at the end. So each of our sites has one of these. And to answer the question from earlier, I think we have, what is this? 7 plus 37, 44 sites. And each one probably took about 2 hours to make. Although gathering some of the redevelopment information from people or digging through public records to find how much properties sold for and stuff, that can take a little bit longer. But just dropping things into the story map and making sure they look right, probably about 2 hours per site. In addition to success stories, I've used this as a place to advertise all the other projects we're working on. Right now, this is a ArcGIS hub site, HUB hub site, that is embedded in the story map. So this is a giant story map. It's not something you want to try to look at when you don't have good internet. I learned that when I was trying to give a presentation somewhere where there was not good internet, and it was not happy. Okay, so the hub site is another app that I built inside the ArcGIS Online environment. So far I've gotten 3,759 hits on it, which is kind of cool. When you use the ArcGIS Online tools, you can see the usage of them. And there's a Survey 123, which is also an ArcGIS tool that I've embedded in this story map. I don't even know if it's going to load. Oh, it did. It kind of did. There it was. If you're looking at the link on your computer, that'll probably load for you. And you can go through the app without even leaving the story map. I've embedded another giant story map inside this story map. That this one talks about our historical aerial project, which is related to brownfields because we've spent some money on it. A map of all of our petroleum eligibility determinations, which is one of the other things we do as a state agency regulating oil and gas, is people have to basically ask us if they have a EPA assessment grant that works on petroleum. They need a yay or nay from us on whether or not it is eligible to use that money on it. A list of our grant application support letters with that goofy spinning money ball that I found and thought was amazing. I forgot to take off. That's okay. But yeah, so ours is very hefty. Takes a lot of internet to be able to look at it. It doesn't work really well on your phone, but it contains everything and a bunch of statistics, and it's pretty cool. I've enjoyed working on it.
And again, Madeline's the more advanced GIS person, and she is using the paid version of ESRI, correct?
Yes, I'm not sure how much it costs for us to have our ESRI, our ArcGIS organizational account, but this is what the back end of ArcGIS Online looks like for me. I have an organization tab that shows, all of our credit usage, all of our licenses, how many members there are. I couldn't get a number on how much this cost, but I will say we're trying to upgrade to ArcGIS Enterprise, which I think Alicia has, and it's costing like at least 10 grand. I want to say like 18 grand, maybe more. So not something you want to do if
it's just for this
money.
And Savannah, you are using the free version, correct?
Yes. So the version that I use, all you have to do is create a username and password, and then anyone can use the ESRI, the story map builder format that's online, and it's all web-based. So I'll do the demo I show later. Will hopefully some of the rookies that I see identified themselves in the chat. It's going to make you feel better. It's going to make you feel like you can do it. That's my part of the presentation, is to let you know you can do it.
So Savannah is the one you want to listen to if you think you're going to be the one having to do story maps and you don't really have a background. If you have a background in GIS and love it, or have a GIS person in your agency that you can partner with, then that's when you want to listen to Madeline and Alicia. And just a question, okay, just as a reminder, if you have a specific question, please put that in the Q&A and not in the chat, because it will get lost in the chat. Just make sure, put it over in the Q&A. So question for Madeline, does the story journal format meet ADA requirements?
I am not sure, to be honest. I am not sure if it does. That would be something to look into for sure. I don't know what ESRI may build that into all of their apps, but I don't know. I'm gonna make a note to check though.
Okay, yeah, that's something to take into consideration, like as we're building websites and doing all this outreach, is is also kind of thinking about that. Is it, do you have the text behind the pictures to say what the picture is if someone is sight impaired, and just kind of looking at that well. So it's just something to keep in mind. Savannah, did you, or Alicia?
I know that when I was looking around on the StoryMap Builder program last night, they do have that on there, and I was really surprised to see that and really excited. But they do. That is a feature that's in the free version.
Great. Another question. Okay. I don't always understand all the words I'm saying. I'm just going to say that right now. Do the storyboards that are inside the GIS tab on your company's website? Oh, Madeline, the storyboards are inside the GIS tab of your company's website. Is that, yeah?
You can find it. It's on our oklahoma.gov/OCC. If you go to the oil and gas division and navigate down into Brownfields, pollution abatement department. Whoops. Broke everything. There it is. There is a link on our Brownfield site that says somewhere, Brownfields Program StoryMap. There it is. We just redid our website, so I wasn't actually sure what it said. View the full OCC Brownfield Program StoryMap. So it's linked there, but the best way I've found to probably get it out to people is to just send them the link whenever they're wanting to know more about brownfields, or I've put it in my email signature so people can see what I do when I email them.
And I think we've answered about the how long does it take. How often do you update your page, Madeline?
I have a standing calendar appointment to update it every week, but to be honest, I probably update it about once a month whenever we get new sites or get new sites or close old sites or have something else we need to add.
And Adam asked, is it accurate to say that this is a more in-depth presentation than the success stories that we submit to EPA? I'm assuming we wouldn't create story maps for sites where redevelopment take place. It's really up to you whether or not you want to do ones for ones that, you can also use this as marketing. Like this site we've already assessed or we've already done a phase 1. It's ready for somebody to buy it and be redeveloped. Or, we've done the assessment work and now it's still in progress and here's pictures of the cleanup. So you can really put them in for any part of that. But one thing I did want to mention with that Madeline brought up, she was talking about how it's her, she had a spreadsheet that was her public record. And we've all seen that spreadsheet and it's kind of boring. And it's not really accessible to the public. And so this is a really a more creative way of interacting with the public to not just check the box of that public record, but also, make it something that's useful for the public and the communities to use. Okay, and then we're going to go on for Alicia to talk about her program real quick, and then we'll pause again and take a few more questions. So Alicia, would you like to talk about your story map?
Sure. I'm sharing right now. Let's make sure I'm sharing right. Is it up on there right now? We're good?
Yep.
Okay, so basically, this is not Brownfield, but it's just a simple demo I kind of created just to give you guys an idea. When I usually decide to use story maps, it's usually when someone wants to control the narrative of what they're showing and give maybe like a minimal interaction, but you want to get the point across exactly what you're trying to say. So here's a project that the city of Lafayette were doing. They took a couple of students and artists and they decided to go and paint the storm drains in Lafayette to educate people about not polluting the storm drains. So what they asked me to do is just put something together that also looked good on mobile, which is why I picked this one. And this is also, most of the features I'm going to show are available on the free version. So that's why I chose this one as well. But what you do is you'll have like your cover photo just to kind of give, and you could put a write up here. And then what I have here is basically where it takes you through the locations, because on their phone, they don't want to just know which one it is. They want to know where the locations are. So you can click on each one and it kind of takes you to each location as you scroll through. And then it also gives a little write-up of each artist. But it's just more so for that, like when you're walking around, you're like, oh, where exactly is this storm drain? And what I've also done at the top, I really like how this story map gives you bookmarks, because sometimes people are familiar with specific artists, so they want to go to that person. And then it gives you like a full page of information of that specific storm drain to get more info on it. So like I said, this is pretty much a quick, simple one. It doesn't take much time. If you get the pictures and the information, I mean, you could finish this in less than a day. I mean, it doesn't take very long. Just getting all the info, putting in the locations. This is a web map here that you can also interact. They can zoom in. And again, this looks really good on a mobile phone, so you can kind of go through, but you can go through each location, or you can click here on the bookmark. So super simple, but just another option for story map. Basically, that seems pretty sharp, but any questions?
So I like that you brought up, and I think everyone has mentioned this, you know, or Savannah and also mentioned on theirs, with the new version of StoryMaps, it's mobile phone friendly, which is actually one of the keys for reaching some environmental justice communities, I have found out, because we are working on marketing our Brownfield Revolving Loan Fund. And one of the things I found in talking up with our communities is not everybody necessarily has a laptop or computer at home, but most people have a smartphone. And so a lot of, you know, it's important that the information be accessible on a phone in order to reach those communities. So really great. We do have a question. Is the content up on a specific day saved in a way that is easy to provide for public records requests? For example, on a website, the content can be screen grabbed and provided.
Where are you talking about, the pictures?
I don't know.
Because I guess, I mean, because we'll go and I didn't want to get into it now, but I didn't know if that was part of the organization and how we like put it together. I don't know if you wanted me to wait to go over that later, but we'll go over that later about how I get all the information and make it easy for me to put together.
Perfect. Okay. And a couple of people have asked, and I know Madeline, you talked about this, is this embedded in your own website? Okay. For those of us who maybe had to get a little scrappy in past jobs, and perhaps it was a little challenging to update the organizational website, this might be a good way of being able to control the content, get it up to date, make sure that it's updated regularly, and then, like they said, have a link to this on your organization's webpage, just so that you know, as long as your organization is okay with that. But sometimes that's a good workaround, as opposed to having all of this project related data, you know, on your organization's website where it might get lost. So just
what we've done, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say what we've done in the past, when you're, as far as updating, we'll embed like a story map, and that way the website stays the same. So whenever I want to add a new slide, or even how Madeline had like a new bullet point, I just go and update that on my time, but there's no link sharing that needs to change. The website stays the same, and I can always control whether I want to show more info, take things off. It just makes it much easier, because they're like, hey, GIS, send me your information. So I send them one link, and I just keep updating that link, basically. So it just kind of limits us going back and forth, making sure they have the right link or not. So that's pretty much what we do often.
Great. And then several people have asked about the time it takes. Just an FYI, you can kind of do double duty. A lot of the time that it takes is in the data collection. But FYI, a lot of the data collection is stuff you would probably be interested in sending to ACRES, EPA ACRES, for reporting, and or into EPA for a success story. So you can kind of do those three things simultaneously, like pull the information from ACRES or update it, you know, put it in a success story, and then put it on your story map. So you can kind of economy of scale of tackling three things at once. So just kind of keep that in mind. A lot of the time goes into putting together the data, the pictures, but you can use those for multiple multiple things. Okay, we got a couple more. Have you considered adding QR codes to the sites on the ground to highlight the story maps and provide more information? Or like put a sign up on the site? That's a really good idea.
Yes, we do have QR codes depending on which one.
I don't, but now I wish we
Great
did.
idea.
That's a good idea.
Okay. All right, so that's kind of our general overview. Now we're kind of getting in more to the panel discussion. So my questions are always, the who, what, when, where, and how. So for our panelists, what kind of prompted you to put a story map together? Was it a direction from higher up, something you saw that you needed? And what's kind of your overall goal for having this story map? So I'm just going to keep going in the same order. So Savannah, we will start with you.
Thanks, Rebecca. So I really wanted to show the public on our website. So just a little backstory. When I started working for NMED, I was given the responsibility to update our Brownfields website. So that was assigned to me. And I'm not a website person. I didn't really know how to do it. I just had to kind of learn. And so when I figured out that I had that control and that I could put something on our website, I got really excited because I could do something on my own and control this, and I can put whatever I want on there. Not really, but I thought, okay, well, I could do a story map and then I could just put it on our website, and then everyone will like it and they'll be like, oh, this is so cool. And so no one really told me to do it. I just got really inspired by what I saw other people doing. So what I saw, like Madeline, and then also some of my colleagues at ODEQ in Oklahoma, they had made one on their website and it's really incredible. And I thought, wow, I got to try this. And so I did it and then just put it on our website. And yeah, that's it.
And Madeline, how about you? So what kind of prompted you to put it together like this?
Well, kind of like Savannah, no one told me I had to, go make a story map, but we did have that public record that I was in charge of updating this little, I think it was a Word document with a table on it. And I was like, oh, I hate this. And so I decided to try to switch it over to a story map type format, just because at the SCOG and SCOG conferences that I've been going to for the last probably, if I started this in 2017 and I started GIS in Brownfields in 2013, I'd probably been going to like 3 or 4 of our like regional GIS groups conferences, and they talked about story maps and how great they were. And I finally decided, I was like, that sounds like the perfect thing for Brownfields and I should just give it a try. And so I chose the format I chose because it would kind of be like a website replacer, like you were talking about, how if you don't have the skills to be able to code a website, I don't know, or if you don't have the access through your work to be able to work on your website, then it's a great website replacer, and it would also replace our public record. So that's why I chose the version I chose and why I started doing it in the first place.
Great. All right, Alicia, how about you? So
For us, I think, like they were saying, it's mostly the website replacement. You're always asked to display the information. And we all know most people we talk to are visual people. And being that I love GIS, I'm always trying to promote GIS. So I'm always trying to put something in a visual with location-based data so that they understand how important it is to not just see what it is, but to know exactly where it is and be able to get the location pretty quickly. So that's why I chose the one I chose, because everything I kind of put up there, it has some type of location tied to the item. So it's not just information, right there when you're how to get to it and how to answer that question quickly. So that's kind of how story maps come about for us, basically.
Well, and I think even though, some nonprofits do have brownfield grants, it's only recently that they've been eligible to do assessments. So most of us that have brownfield assessment grants or brownfield funding our government entities, and our websites tend to be a little more here is information and not really, you know, a marketing tool or promoting success stories. So yeah, this is a good partnership with that to be able to provide that information more visually. Okay, so for creating your story map, so who's the who? So who's involved in creating it? Who do you partner with for data? You know, what's their role, and how are you able to work with them in that process? So, all right, I'm going to start with the next one down. So Madeline, we're going to start with you.
Start with me, okay. So in terms of actually making the map, I think I am going to share my screen real quick. There it is. Just so you guys can see what the back end of the map looks like. So everyone at my job who is a GIS person has access to ArcGIS Pro, which is a desktop application where you can make the maps, work on your shape files, which I have one open here. It's my Brownfield site shapefile. So it's all the points of where my Brownfield sites are. This is what the back end looks like of that dashboard kind of map I showed you earlier. And I do this, like I work on this. I mean, obviously I collect data from people's Brownfields program applications. So I do rely on them to give me an accurate address for their site, obviously, or to give me kind of a map of where it is. And then I actually use a website called OK Maps. It's our like geospatial data clearinghouse for the state of Oklahoma that has all the parcel data for every property across the state. So I get the exact, you know, boundaries of the properties right. But other than that, like going to OK Maps to make sure I have the parcels correct, it's just me making stuff. And then I run the map by our public information officers every once in a while to make sure that they're cool with it. But yeah.
All right, great. Alicia? So who's involved in
basically, usually it just depends. I mean, usually I work with a bunch of different groups, and I could share this with you guys to give you an idea. Let me close this, sorry. But basically, like we said, I think I may be jumping ahead, but it's just I guess I'll show you this piece of collecting the data. It's mostly who you're working with as the person that we're trying to get the data from. So I usually give them an easy application, and this is another ESRI product, it's Web App Builder. And what they do is I'll give them this, and then it kind of has like pretty clear instructions. They're just gonna click on the star, come in here, tell me the location, the artist. They're gonna come in, choose a file. They can go in, pick the artwork, add it in there. And now whenever they're done, whenever I have it, I'll just have all the information needed to complete the map. And then kind of like Madeline said, sometimes you'll tie this directly to the project you're working on. So as they add this in, it's already tied to the program or story map that I'm pushing out there. So if they add a new point will show up in the story map. Because unlike Madeline, not all the people I work with are very familiar with ArcPro. So they get a little intimidated about sending me information because they're like, oh, wait, I don't know GIS. So this is kind of what I give them just to kind of get quick updates and make sure they're always giving me up-to-date data, basically. So it just depends on the project, who I'm actually working with to get their information.
So Alicia, I think that might loop into one of the questions that we have. How can consultants you work with during the assessment and beyond help you guys make this content? So is that something like you might be able to send to a consultant and say, let me know where we are in the process, or?
Yes, and we've given like sometimes, I mean, we do have an enterprise account, so we'll give specific logins. So let's say they have a crew going out taking pictures. We'll have like crew 1, crew 2 or something. So it also gives me who collected the data and a timestamp. So we can say, hey, so-and-so collected this, is this the right location? But it just helps keep the communication lines clear. But yeah, we'll send it to whoever we're communicating with to get that info out there.
And any of the consultants who have worked with me on this call know what I'm going to say. You can always take great pictures. Take great pictures when you're doing your assessment work, send those in. Take ones not just like the close-up of the sampling location, but one that would work, in a more markety kind of context. So that would be great.
And this is live.
Partners. Go ahead, Alicia.
Sorry. But I was going to say this is live too. So it helps sometimes, even if they're out there taking a picture, you don't want them coming back and go, oh, I deleted the picture. Like right now it's going straight onto the server. So there's no like loss in data or information. And while they're out there, if I'm looking at it, I can kind of call and be like, hey, crew 2 needs to stay out there and take more because we didn't get A, B, and C. So, and they'll go back out and do what they need.
Oh, great. All right, Savannah, would you like to talk about who was involved in creating your story map and who you coordinated with at your agency?
Sure. So people over the years of our Brownfields program have taken photos, site photos, and gathered information. And so when I was creating our story map, I went to those project files and I gathered the information, gathered the photos that I thought I would need. And I used all of those things to create kind of an outline for the story map and then outlines for each project. So I really dug through our files and found the information that I needed to make the story map. But over the years, everyone who's worked in our program has taken photos and saved things in our files, and that's really all I used and for mine.
Yeah.
And did you have, I think, Savannah, you said something about how you put this together and then showed your bosses, and all of a sudden they got excited about story maps too. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so my supervisors knew, that I was doing this, but then our upper management. So in New Mexico, we have, like the Secretary of the Environment, and then we have Deputy Secretary. Those people who are in upper management positions, it really helps them understand what we're doing and what we've done in the past and what we're capable of. It really helps them understand our projects in a quick, fast, manner. And they saw it, and they really, they were big fans of it. So I think decision makers like to see things in this format, is my opinion and in my experience. And so, yes, upper management likes story maps in my experience.
Yeah, I definitely agree, because a lot of us are housed in larger organizations, and Brownfields is one little part. So this is a good way of conveying that even within our own organization. So that's great. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the how now. And Alicia, we're going to start with you. So how did you collect or organize the data that went into story maps? What programs did you use? Did you use Excel, ArcGIS? Any tips you have for our folks on the prep work of pulling together the data? And you went over that a little bit, but if you want to talk about that a little bit more, that would be great.
Yeah, and I guess the first thing I would say is kind of get a clear understanding of what type of data they have available already. And then based on what they have, if they have pictures lined up, if they have locations, then you can kind of cater what application you're going to use to get that info. But like I shared before, most of the time we're using the web app builder, and I pulled it up on the screen. It was just basically another ESRI application that makes it just easier, because that's the biggest thing. You want to make sure you're getting this information and you're having the constant contact. So if you give them something that seems overwhelming and difficult, they're less likely to even go in there and update. So for us, this is just a more simple way to kind of just say, hey, click on the star, put in the updates, click here. You just have to fill in a few fields, but you also want to make sure all the information that you need in your story map, as far as like name of the picture, captions, any type of things like that, describing it, that you put that in here so you have exactly what you need when you go to start working, because that'll kind of help you with your time. If you have everything right there ready for you, putting everything together and designing it is much easier than when you're trying to figure out, well, what is this picture? Oh, this is too blurry. I don't even know what that is. You want them to come in here and give you everything you need. And for this project, the demo I showed you is only location, the artist, and the description. So right away, they can come in here and they could actually search the location. They don't really need to put it in, but I just make them do it twice just in case there was an error when they were kind of going within the map and putting a specific location. But them just attaching the file field just saves time, and it puts it kind of stored somewhere for me so that I can go back and look at all the information when I'm ready to start building. And then when I see an error, something's wrong, I can call them right away and say, hey, I need more info on this. You need to add more on this. And sometimes we'll put more info here about how much, or we'll put like an explanation of exactly what we need, like put 5 to 10 sentences of this, describe that, just so we get a clear understanding of what they're trying to, what their narrative is about the project. And that's basically.
And we have a question. Alicia, can you tell us the name of the application again?
Oh, it's ESRI Web App Builder.
Okay.
And it's just using the Smart Editor tool. That's the little tool you see with the star, but it's Web App Builder.
Okay, perfect. And Savannah, okay, I liked Savannah is the bare bones. And I think, do you have the Word document that you put together? If you can show us that, I think it made it really easy to help collect the information and make it, because I'm one who can go down the rabbit hole pretty easily in trying to include everything. And Savannah did a good job of outlining her story map ahead of time to specifically have, you know, what the picture was. And yeah, here you go. All right, Savannah, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Now, some of you are going to, you know, this is really basic. So mine is like, if you don't, this is how I just did, okay, these are my photos that I want to use. And then, you know, this Word document here just shows you the narrative, the text that I decided to use for the slideshows that I showed you all that are embedded in my story map. This is the text, and I prepared it for some of my slideshows. I prepared the text ahead of time, and for some of them, I just did it on the fly when I was creating the story map. And so when I do the quick demo, I'll show you that. And my prep work is really basic compared to Madeline and Alicia, but this is how I did it. So
I like it. It outlines it and kind of makes it, you know, realizes I only have to come up with a line or two for each picture, and kind of keeps it simple. So yeah, that works really well too. Madeline, do you want to talk about how you prepped for yours and what you put together and what programs you use for that?
Sure. So I actually wish I had made outlines like this because I didn't. And luckily, I was kind of saved by the fact that the people who have been in the Brownfields program before me are very organized, and we have a folder for each of our sites. And within that folder, we have, you know, environmental reports, enrollment docs, closure docs, GIS stuff, and photos. Usually we might have some extra folders too, but my boss is super organized, and the boss that I had before him also was pretty organized, and she had folders for everything, and everything was well labeled. So I was able to go into each site and like either pull the actual photos themselves, or like take little screenshots of report chunks that I wanted to include in the screen or in the success story, and put those directly into the story map. But I feel like if I had had some sort of outline somewhere else before going into those, it might have been a little bit easier. But thankfully I did have some pretty well organized predecessors in this program. So yeah, I mean, that's just Word documents, PDFs, JPEGs, not very many movies. People didn't take very many movies, but we do have a couple videos that I put in the story map of like well pluggings or something. So the really nice file organization within our like just organization servers, like agency servers, was really helpful. That spreadsheet I showed you within ArcGIS Pro started off as a like Excel spreadsheet that I pulled into ArcGIS Pro, and now I just work on it inside of Pro. And I would say the hardest part of my spreadsheet or of my story map is probably updating that shapefile, that spreadsheet within ArcGIS Pro, and then pushing it up into the ArcGIS Online environment. Which that's not too bad because it's not really that hard. It's just a little bit tedious to make sure I get everything that is built with those updated Excel sheets or shape files to make sure I get it updated. So it's pretty much, it's table based, I guess, Excel spreadsheet based for the most part, until you get to story maps when you do need to, you know, have a bit of a writer in you and pull some good photos. Let's see, there's a
Great.
Q&A.
And Alicia, is yours, Alicia and Madeline, do both of yours go into, you talked about the shape files. So when you're gathering that data, you know, Madeline, you talked about updating yours. Alicia, I'm assuming when you're gathering that data, it goes into a shape file data set automatically. So you kind of have that on the back end, which actually is useful. Probably you can use it in other applications, not just StoryMaps.
Yes, exactly. Because usually we get requests and someone will say, oh, well, can you build us a dashboard summarizing the information and the numbers? And then I already have it there, so I'll just go in and create the dashboard based on the information they already gave me.
Okay. Great.
Edwin Aranza has his hand up.
Somebody asked in the Q&A, can you use 128A grant funding to pay for a GIS subscription? And Elizabeth indicated, you know, as long as it benefits your Brownfield program, then yes, you can. You do kind of have to watch that, you know, just to make sure if you're getting the GIS subscription, you know, how many programs is it really benefiting? Because EPA might look at that. And Elizabeth, you can add to that, but we can kind of check on that. And then I think, was there one more that came in? Madeline, did you say?
Someone has their hand up, Edwin.
All right, Edwin, I am going to allow you to talk. And I'm going to ask you to unmute. All right, Edwin, what's your question?
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Hello.
Did you have a particular question, Edwin? Okay, I'm guessing he was just raising his hand to say hello. Okay. One question, you know, Madeline, you mentioned, I think you said something about videos. So have any of you used drone footage at all? Just wondering.
We're working on that.
I know, that's my next thing on my list too. Okay, so obviously with story maps, it's a very visual format and all of your story maps have fabulous photos. So any tips on photo quality, file type, you know, where did you get photos from? You know, Savannah, you looked at ones from the past and had some creative ways of finding them. Any suggestions on angles or any tips or tricks for getting photos? So let's see. Alicia, we started with you last time, right? So we're going to start with Savannah this time.
Okay, I got my photos from our files, and a lot of them were pretty old, and a lot of them I screenshotted from reports, and some of them I took off the internet and then just sourced on the story map. So my pictures came from everywhere. And now our program has gotten really good within the past several years of asking consultants to provide, you know, they provide their photos in the exhibits, but we also ask them to provide the files separately, like through FTP site or something, so that we can download the highest quality versions and save those in our files, because we know we're going to need that picture of the bulldozer lifting up soil, you know, removing contaminated soil. Like, we need that photo, and we need it to be high quality, and we need it to not only for the story maps, but for conference presentations and things. So a lot of my photos and my story map are low quality, and you'll see that, but they're the only ones that we have, you know. So it's important to really make the effort to get those good photos.
And didn't you get some? Oh no, Madeline. We'll switch over to Madeline. Madeline found some through Google Earth, right?
Yes, I did. Let me, do we have time for me to show people?
Sure,
Maybe.
of course.
Okay.
And while you're bringing that up, you know, as Savannah mentioned about consultants, and someone asked about consultants before, that's one of the things we put in our contract now, that in addition to providing the photos in the report, that they have to give us copies of the either in JPEG format, or I think JPEG or TIFF or PNG. There we go. Some kind of format where we can use in different applications, including story maps.
Nice.
All right, Madeline, you ready?
All right, I am ready. All right,
Okay.
so
And you're in Google
Earth.
Earth, correct?
Yes, I opened up Google Earth. I zoomed to where one of our cool sites is, and I'm going to grab the little yellow guy on the right side. His name, well, no, I'm not going to grab him yet. I don't need him yet. So, whoop. Sorry, I'm going to give you guys all vertigo. As long as you have, like over on the left side in Google Earth, if you have 3D buildings checked, like if I uncheck it, looks like this. If I check 3D buildings over on the left-hand side, you can see cool 3D effects. Actually, I think I'm in the wrong place. Hold up. Where am I? Trying to look at our new Steel Yards apartments. Well, it's being finicky. Anyway, sometimes you could see new development in 3D just by kind of, like if you middle click on your mouse, if it has the little center button, you can drag it around and get closer to the horizon, or you can fly up a little higher and get some cool 3D views of your sites. Sometimes, if you're really lucky, let me see if I can find the Devon Tower. There it is. So this is a pretty old 3D building view of Oklahoma City. These buildings in the center here no longer exist. They were one of our brownfield sites that is now a big parking garage. I'm not sure why they're not showing up in this photo, except for if you look down in the bottom here of the, I don't know if you guys can really see that flashing, it's pretty tiny, but there's a little clock that has an arrow going across the top of it. So right now we're actually looking at historical aerial imagery and historical 3D build out, basically. Like the Devon Tower is obviously like a weirdo artifact, like it was not built in 1985. But if I click this clock here, I can scoot all the way forward to 2018, 2020, and sometimes the 3D imagery changes, but for some reason it's not doing it today. But anyway, if you want a nice kind of 3D shot of your site, you can use Google Earth. And sometimes you can show older imagery by using the time slider up at the top. Some is better than others.
Do you just take a screenshot of this?
Yep, I use the snipping tool.
Okay.
That's what we have at my work. Ooh, and my computer is not happy with trying to run ArcGIS Pro and Zoom and Google.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to get out of this real quick.
That is a lot to ask. All right. And again, you know, if you do pull stuff from Google Earth Pro or find historical resources online, you know, always cite your sources, as we said before. Alicia, any suggestions for you on photos, file types, anything on collecting photos?
I think for the most part, like you said, PNG and JPEGs, but I like to, my thing is if you can build an application or collector so that they're already giving you a picture tied to a location, it just saves you time knowing exactly where that is if you're building an application that needs location. But if they're just going out there and they're taking pictures, I would suggest tell them take at least 3, like give them a minimum number, just so that you know you're getting multiples. And even if they don't, or even say 4, and even if they don't take 4, at least you know you'll have more than one in case it's not the right angle, or maybe multiple angles, zoom in, stuff like that, just because you don't know the size of the screen or how much room you'll have building the application that you're going to build. But that's pretty much the advice we give them about the pictures.
Yeah. And as a Brownfield grantee, I learned this from the EPA Inspector General. It's always good, you know, your responsibility is make sure the work is being performed. So it's good for you to go out and do a site visit while the consultant is out there. So you can always take pictures then too. And just kind of one tip that I learned from a friend who is a professional photographer, if you can, bring along like a small step ladder. Because sometimes if you get up, you know, even just a few feet and kind of shoot down, you can get, you know, more in the view and more, you know, less of the blank stuff on the top and the bottom. You can get more of what you really want to focus on. So just a little tip there. Okay, so now those were all kind of our panelist questions. So we thought we would, it would be helpful to show you a brief demo of how StoryMaps works. So Savannah, you're going to do our demo for us to help get you a feel for the software. And again, she's using the free version for those of us who do not have a GIS background. And we'll also be providing a link to a tutorial that ArcGIS has that's more in depth. So Savannah is just kind of going to give you the broad overview of how to put it together, just to give you a feel for it. So Savannah, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Rebecca. I'm going to share my screen with everyone again. Share. And yeah, so just to let everyone know, this is probably, if you're a rookie out there, those are the people I'm communicating with right now is our rookies. Let me make sure I have the right. Oh, sorry guys, let me just pull this up again. Okay, there we go. Can you see my PowerPoint, everyone? It should just look like a Google search. Okay, so the first step, if you are just getting into wanting to make a story map using the free story map builder, you would just Google it and you'll go to that link and it'll pull up this page here. And if you've never been here before, you're going to have to create a username and a password. And then once you do that, you will log in and it will take you to this page that is just called the stories page. And yours, if you're just starting, it's going to be blank. So you won't see that tile there with the published story. You'll have to go and look at this tab that says new story, and it has a little plus sign. And one thing I want to show you is if you scroll down on your new story page, what you're going to see is learning and resources. And for me, that was crucial. ESRI has amazing tutorials, and I highly would recommend the Getting Started. I'm clicking on the Getting Started tab there and then reading the articles that their professionals have put together, because it helped me out a lot. So this is one of the links here to the Getting Started, and that's the first thing I read. And after that, I was like, I can do this. Like, I know I can do this. This is not hard. So read that if you're a beginner. So the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna go over and you're gonna click New Story. Okay, and it's gonna give you options here. It's gonna say you can start from scratch, or you can use one of these templates that we made, Sidecar, Guided Map Tour, Explorer Map Tour. I did the start from scratch because I didn't really know. I just was jumping in. I was like, let's just build something. Let's just try it. So that's what I'm going to be showing you. Mine was the build from scratch option. So the first thing it's going to do once you click start from scratch, it's going to take you to your, this is called like the title page. Literally there's a cursor and you can just start typing right away. You can start building this thing immediately. It's very simple. And immediately you can click on these there's little plus signs that are going to be to the left side, and it'll give you options. You can add an image, and all you do is just browse on your computer, choose the image and upload, and it uploads it immediately. And so you can see here for my story map, I just selected, I had already got my images all together like we discussed, and I selected this gorgeous picture of a sculpture that's in front of one of our brownfield properties that's been redeveloped. I said, hey, I want that to be my cover picture. And then you upload it and it will go on the top or at the very beginning. That's the first thing I wanted to see, some people to see something beautiful. And you can also, there's all these little icons that you can click on. One is at the top, there's a tab for design. So from the beginning, you can decide, do I want everything to be centered, or do I want it to be justified to the left or to the right? Do I want to, what theme do I want? You can see that it gives you different text options, but it's all very, very user-friendly. And so you just start building it. You are immediately given the option. It opens up this, it's called the block palette. So you see it says basic options. So basic would be if you want to add text. Media is if you want to add a map or an image right away, and then, or a video. And so you start selecting from these options that are in the block palette. And then, so in my story map, I use the immersive slideshow. That's what I used. I just chose it because I thought it would be the best way to highlight, 10 different sites that have a bunch of pictures associated with each of them. But you can literally build this to be whatever format you want. So as soon as you select text, it'll bring up a cursor. It gives you options for bold, italicized. You can add a link. It gives you a lot of options, and this is all free. It's all, you don't have to really, you can start messing around with this if you like right now. I mean, you could just start. And so you can see, you'll start adding your text. You can have different headers. You can have subheadings. Then you can go ahead and like add an image here, and then it gives you options to center the image or justify it. So this is where I started adding my slideshows. I just wanted to walk you guys through this so you can see how simple the one that I created really is. So you just add the title, then you go and add a subheading I did for the address. And then like I just chose slideshow, and it automatically, the website refreshes and it adds this slideshow feature. And so here you can see it already starts giving you the option for like your title slide. Do you want to add media? Do you want your first image to be a map? So I said, okay, I want my first image in my slideshows to be a picture of the site, the redeveloped site. So that's what I did for all my slideshows. I uploaded the photo. Luckily for this site, we had really good high quality pictures in the file. And so for the second slide, I said, okay, I want to do a map, but I'm like, well, I didn't make a map. That's okay. They let you embed what's called an express map. And really, it takes you right to it. You just select, I want to do an express map. It's a quick and easy map. It takes you to the United States. You zoom in on Albuquerque or wherever your site is, and you literally just drop a pin. And everything, this is very user-friendly. Like it tells you exactly how to do it the whole time. It guides you, and it just says, this is the next step. These are your options. So it's really user-friendly. And like I said, I would navigate to my files and I would say, okay, I want to go upload this photo, and then here's my text, So I would literally just copy and paste the text from my outline into my slides. And so this makes it really easy. If you have time to prepare, I would suggest, getting your information together ahead of time if you can. And so someone had a question in the chat or in the Q&A about sharing. And this is a really good question, because even in the free version, you can choose to make this a private story where only you can view it, or you can make it public available to anyone. So that means when you share the link, you know, like mine's public, anyone and everyone can see this one, but you can keep it private if you want to. So I wanted to show you.
When you're developing it, right?
Yeah. When you're developing it, you can keep it private. Right. Then you can make it public and you can publish it. So at the end, you know, when you've created your story map, you know, a simple version like mine, you just go up in the website. There's a little link at the top where you just hit that little link circle with the link inside of it, and it copies the URL. And that's how you just put it on your website, or you can choose to embed, like what Alicia and Madeline were talking about. You can embed the story map. So that way in your website, you actually see the image of the story map and you can click through it on the website. Unfortunately, our agency's website doesn't allow that. So I can only use a link. So you can also, yeah, so here you see the options up there: add to favorites, embed the story, print. You can turn on autoplay where it'll scroll through it automatically, which is really cool. Like I can think of a lot of uses for that autoplay option. But here's our website for NMED. You can see that I just have a link to this story map. It just says success story. Scroll through this ESRI story map to see what we've done. And like I said, ours isn't fancy, but it's there. And you know, that's how easy it is. You just get in there, you start building. The program assists you along the way. And what else can I say? It's simple. You can do it.
So Savannah, we have a question in the Q&A. How many configurations did you try before you settled on the one you ended up using?
So I did try several of the other formats, and they're all really good. I thought of using a big map and then having, icons on all the locations across the state. And that way someone could go and click on each, pin. But in the end, I decided that I just went with it. I don't really have a reason why I chose the format I did. I think it was just I'm just going to make a decision and go with it, and we can revise it later. So I think the cool thing about this free version is that you can go in and change it anytime, or your coworkers can you create a username and password. Your coworkers can log in there and change it and update it anytime they want to, or add more to it. So that's why I like it, but there really is no reason I chose the format I did. I think I just wanted to have something, Yeah,
and I like with yours that it's here's a picture of the redevelopment. The next slide is the map, and the next slide kind of walks you through the site history. I think it's a good way to, especially if you're just getting started, to kind of organize your information to move it forward. And like you said, just get it done. I think sometimes we focus a lot on, what's the best option, let's evaluate everything. And then we don't actually get to the end with anything. So sometimes you got to pick what works and go with it, and adjust along the way if you want to. So Madeline, are you ready to do, will your computer handle doing a demo of the Fancy Pro version?
I think so.
Okay.
So I did close ArcGIS Pro because I forgot I was doing this part. But what I had showed you guys before, where I had the spreadsheet up inside the map, basically there's one little button. You right click on whatever shapefile you want to push up to the ArcGIS Online environment. And then you get to work with your data in like your web browser. I'm going to show you what that looks like. And I guess it would help if I shared my screen. I will do that. So, all right, so I'm all logged into ArcGIS Online right now. And so I'm going to go up to my content, which is where all of the stuff that I've created lives. So I don't think any of my coworkers' stuff is over in here. But this is all my stuff. Like I said, I've been using this ArcGIS Online for many years now. So I have 484 items in my content. They're not all related to the Brownfield story map. So let's go into that folder over here on the left. And if you see these two files up at the top that say Brownfield Polygon and Brownfield Site. So the Brownfield Site is what I'd call like a point shapefile for any GIS people. That's my point that I like to have on my map, because no matter how far in or out you scroll on a map, the point shapefiles are going to change in size with however far you're scrolled out. So you're always going to see them. But I also wanted to have an outline of the sites so I can do like area calculations, and so people can literally just see the boundaries of sites. So I have a polygon shapefile that I put in my maps as well. Those shapefiles I end up putting into what's called a web map. So not a web app, but map with an M. And I named it Brownfields Base Map 2018 because that's when I overhauled a bunch of the way our stuff is displayed. So they feed this map, which has some funky colors because I really like colorful stuff. Anyone's seen my office at the OCC, you're like, oh, that's where Madeline works, because there's flags everywhere and there's just maps and artwork all up over the walls. It looks pretty crazy. New map viewer is out of beta. Oh, that's exciting. I'm gonna deal with that later though. Okay. So this is what a map inside ArcGIS Online looks like. This is where I would go maybe once a month or once every other month or so, whenever I have site updates to make, like say I've edited the status of one of my Brownfield sites. Like it went from enrolled to closed, and now I need to make sure it shows up that way in all my story map stuff. So these are the layers, the shape files, whatever you want to call them, over here on the left. They're really customizable. You can change their attributes. You can change, well, not attributes. I guess you can change what attributes show. That's fun. But mainly you can change how their little dots show up on your map. And right now I have a color scheme where green is closed and orange is enrolled. And I'm going to leave that alone because I like that. You can also customize pop-ups that show up when you click on the little dots. So this is a pretty heavily configured pop-up. I've changed it from being just like a table of information to looking like sentences with links and stuff, which is all pretty easy to do, but you do need to know a little GIS to do that one, and to know that that's even an option, really, that you can configure the pop-ups. So we've got their symbology, we've got the pop-up. That's really the most important thing. So this map, when I'm all done with it, I would save it and it would be all updated, and all of anywhere where this map was embedded, it would show up as being updated. However, because I like complicated things, or that's the way I built it, let's go back and look at the dashboard. Go back one more, I guess. So this map that is made of shape files from my ArcGIS Pro, this map feeds the operation dashboard that I showed you guys earlier. There it is. So the cool thing about this dashboard, and I know Alicia mentioned making dashboards too, it's kind of a combination of charts and statistics and your map. So you can have your map in it or not. I usually choose to, just because, you know, it's spatial data and I think you should display it spatially. That makes sense to me. I'm going to click edit. Hope I don't break it during this demo. But I guess if I do, it's easy to fix. We're waiting for it to load, I guess. Yeah, every time I update the shape files for the map, I have to come in and update this operations dashboard because everything kind of breaks. Like all of these cute little charts lose their data connection because they were connected to the old shape files that I was using, which I then deleted from the map and put the new ones in. So this probably takes about an hour to update everything. But each of these has little bitty, like a configure gear wheel on every single one of these little charts that are surrounding my map. You can go in and change the colors. You can change what data it's pulling from. I will say it's a little more complicated. But I mean, it's also, you can't like irreparably break anything. If you do something weird in here, you'll just not get the result you want, and you'll just be like, why? And then you Google it and figure it out. But yeah, there's so many data options, chart options. I can change the radius inside here to make it look more or less like a ring or a donut or whatever I want. Slices, you can change the colors. I know it's good to be cognizant of people who are colorblind when you're making color choices. So I try to choose things that are like different value levels. So like darker versus lighter. Like I wouldn't choose like all pastel colors because they would show up the same to somebody, or like similar to somebody who was maybe colorblind. So I try to choose ones that are darker to lighter, but I may not have done a very great job on that one, but in general, that's I think an okay way to start trying to make it a little more user-friendly for people. I'm going to cancel out of this. I don't want to actually change anything right now. But yeah, the dashboard has a ton of options of stuff you can change, but all of these charts are based on the information contained in that table that makes the shapefile of all these little points. So you can get really complicated with it if you want. And then when it comes time to make your story map, where's my tab where I actually make the story map? Is that it? That'll work.
Okay, and as Madeline is bringing up the story map, I just want to remind folks, just in case you're starting to get a little overwhelmed by all this,
Yeah.
Madeline's showing you, if you have somebody in your department that does GIS, you know, some of the things you might be able to ask them for and say, hey, I saw this StoryMap demo and they had this, you know, is that something that we can put into our story map or our GIS database or, you know, our system? So these are just kind of giving you ideas on what you might be able to ask your GIS folks for.
Yeah. And if they are good at GIS but don't know anything about story maps, you can send them my way. And I know a bunch of people who do trainings throughout the year. So we'll get them hooked up. And then they can make you fancy dashboards. The induced seismicity department at the OCC also has some amazing story maps and operations dashboards that are really impressive. So we're using it, this kind of stuff, like across the oil and gas division at the OCC. But so in here, you could see in this like story map journal or map journal builder, you have your main stage, which is the big map or the image or video, whatever you're doing. And then you have your side panel, which is where you add all of your text and links and stuff. I think you could even add videos and images over here. I don't think I did. Oh, I did. There's an image. Okay. Forgot I did that. But yeah, that makes it, I mean, this thing is a monster. So if I didn't have decent internet, it would not be working at all right now. And I will say it doesn't work well on mobile phones. So I may try to overhaul this and make it look more like Savannah's, or make it live within the nice mobile friendly story map, just because that is a good point about the environmental justice communities. I want everyone to be able to see this, not just be limited to having a desktop kind of situation. I think that mainly covers how I built it. So there's like multiple steps to mine, and some of them are a little GIS-y-er than others, but it's not impossible, and it's good. It's fun. People really enjoy having that one-stop shop for GIS info.
Great. Alicia, any any other options or enhancements that y'all use, or any other widgets that you might want to talk about that that Savannah and Madeline may not have covered yet?
Well, I'm going to share my screen. I don't know if you guys can see that it has two things up, but I think for the most part, kind of like Savannah said, building the story map is actually pretty simple once you get into it. But before you even build it, knowing what you're trying to build kind of is based on the information. And this is just ArcPro right here. And I just wanted you to see that having everything in ArcGIS Online, what I do is I can manage, because usually I'm building a few story maps. So I like that I can come in here in my portal. It shows me we have a bunch of data, but it shows me all of the stuff that's in my portal. And if I'm working on a specific one, what I could do is I could just type it in and bring up the map directly related to the artist. And what happens is in this application here that you would give the consultant or whoever, as they're putting in that information, let me just put anything in here and save it. When you come back to your ArcPro project, you can see that it's pretty live. So you see that point popped up right there. So you pretty much can come in here and manage everything you need for your story map. It just makes it quicker getting that data in here. But I guess that's my only tip for you. Like, using ArcPro really is tied very smoothly into the web maps. Like, this exact web map can be the exact web map that you're using in your story map. So if you're the person on the back end, which usually we are doing majority of the work, we want to be able to just make it easier for ourselves. So having multiple maps in Pro that are tied directly to your story map just saves that extra step, because even like Savannah showed, when it's slideshow, sidecar, when you kind of change them, it already formats it for you. Like, if you wanted slideshow and you have all the info, it'll put it. But then if you want sidecar, it'll switch all that info as long as you have the info in the map. And I think that's the most part for managing. And this was just a really nice one that a lot of people like when I send them. Like, this isn't one I did just because I have a few, but I don't know which ones I'm allowed to share. So then this is just one that it's called the chart list. So basically, I just kind of like this format, especially when it comes to Brownfield information, because it can kind of give people an overview already. And as you see, as I'm hovering over, it switches from location. And a lot of people like to summarize categories. So you see, this is great neighborhoods, this is public places. So you can kind of even control the narrative a little more by narrowing it down, because you want to make sure whoever is coming to your story map, whatever question they have, you want them to get the answer as soon as possible. So that'd be my only advice. Just make sure it's like crystal clear exactly what they're supposed to be doing when they get to your map. Like, what am I looking at here? What is this about? And what information can I provide? And then as they click on it, they could get deeper into different things about that exact map. But that's pretty much all the advice, I guess, or tips I would give for different story maps and creating them.
That is great. And for those of you that missed the earlier thing when she was saying sidecar and slideshow, those are different ways of displaying your story map. So those were the ones that Savannah went through in the very beginning. So it's very easy if you're like, I want this format, and you're like, oh, I don't know about that. Let me see what it looks like if my data is in a different format. You know, it's very easy to switch that over. All right. So any questions? So that kind of wraps up our the presentation part for today. If you have any additional questions, you know, make sure to put those in the Q&A or go ahead and raise your hand. And I'm gonna try to share my screen if I can move all these other boxes out of the way. All right. All right, so as Savannah mentioned, ArcGIS has some great tutorials. So this is the link to the tutorial. There's also a lot of videos online for story maps that kind of walk you through the different options. So be sure to kind of go through those, see what your options are. I'm just going to say, people have been asking, you know, how long does it take? It's not something that you're going to be able to do in half an hour. Like, it is something that's going to be an investment of time. But I think once you invest the time, learn it, and then get a pattern down of how you want to put the information on your website, I think it'll take you less time. And again, it's a great way to help bolster your marketing activities. And then, all right, so any questions? I don't see anything else coming through. I'm going to ask a question though. So for any of our panelists, is there something you wish you would have known when you started this process that would have made things easier? Or any kind of general tips that we haven't covered to date?
I wish I would have known, I wish I wouldn't have been nervous and tried it earlier, because I was a little nervous before I started. And one day, you just have to say, I'm going to try this. And I found out it was really simple to make the type of story map that I showed you all. So I wish I would have known it can be simple. It can be complicated or it can be simple, and you just try it out. If you have a few hours in, it could really help you share information, especially with the public.
All right, Madeline or Alicia, anything you wish you would have known, or some a helpful tip that we haven't covered yet?
I think mine, it's not more of what I wish I would have known, but I've found like even now creating more story maps as ESRI keeps updating them, which they do. They keep having different versions. It's really nice, even like the short list, to send a few examples to whoever's asking or requesting the story map. Because sometimes you say story map and they think they know exactly what you mean, but showing them samples of how the location could be tied in or what they want, I usually get something done much quicker, because then they have a full understanding of what I mean when I'm saying story map and what they can get from me. They're not expecting something else. It's kind of direct. They're like, oh, okay, I want B. I'll send them like 3 versions of it, and then they'll pick one, and then we'll go from there based on the information they have. So that really kind of speeds up the process for me.
Great.
I thought of one kind of adjacent. So I used Survey. If you are heavy into GIS and you use Survey 123 or Collector to get photos of sites, I would say take additional photos with just like your regular phone outside of the app to get site photos, because I've learned that those apps do tend to compress your photo quality. And I've tried to, I didn't take pictures at one of my phase 1 walkthroughs with just my regular phone outside of Survey 123. And I don't have the best pictures of that site's phase 1 assessment. So just make sure to take them. If you've got a good phone, if you got a good smartphone, like that's good for pictures, but sometimes special apps can compress your photos.
Okay.
That's all I've got.
Elizabeth, I saw one in the Q&A that maybe we can also do live. Let's see, about in some 128A agreements with states, it requires periodic reporting of success stories. That's true with 104 grantees as well. Can a state use a story map of a successful brownfield project to meet this requirement? So any feedback on that?
I think at this point, I mean, it's nice to have the story map, of course, as visual, but it's still kind of like a requirement to have it on the report, to have a report, because it's not only reporting success stories, but other work. So maybe the report can include just a link to the story map, and I think that should do it. Does that make sense? To make it easier. Mm-hmm.
And I know EPA likes, doing one pagers on successful sites. And like I mentioned before, a lot of the information that you're pulling, if you kind of use Savannah's method of the way she organizes it, that's an easy way. Then attach your photos to it, and you can send that to EPA, and that's a good way of partnering the information together. you can put it in StoryMaps, and then you can send it on to EPA for the success story one-pagers. So kind of using that information twice.
I will say I have the hub site I showed you earlier. Do I have time to show that maybe real quick? It's not a story map really, but it is a method of getting your brownfield story out there.
Sure.
Okay. Sharing again. Okay, so this is, like I said, it's not a story map per se, like that's not the name of this application. The name of this one is an ArcGIS Online Hub, HUB, hub site application. You can see it right there. This is also a website replacer that you can build. If I don't know if you can do it if you have the free version, but I know if you have an organization account, you can. And it looks like a website. And this is the landing page for our 104K assessment grant that we just got, that's focusing on the city of Okemah in Oklahoma. This is the link I give the newspaper in Okemah. It's the link I put in, or I have our public information people put in our Facebook posts about it. So this is another one-stop shop kind of page for just this one certain project, and it answers everyone's questions like, what do we mean when we say all these terms? What's going on with this project? And you can, like a story map, you can embed photos and maps in here as well. So a hub site is another way of getting your story out there, maybe specifically to a population that you're currently working with, whereas story maps are great for marketing and promotion and showing, your bosses or anyone that you would want to work with in the future, just say, hey, here's what we can do. A hub site is great for getting specific information about a project out to a group of people. And I do believe that this one actually is like mobile responsive. So just another ESRI application. And we promise we're not paid by ESRI to talk about this, but they have great tools right now. So there we go.
Perfect. All right, I'm going to bring up.
So chats. What was showing up?
Okay. All right. So here's the contact information for our speakers today. Here's what I have learned. People who put together story maps are more than happy to talk about how they did it, what they went in, and help walk you through. So our speakers today, wonderful resources. If there's anything that you want to talk to them individually about or kind of go over again, feel free to reach out to them. We also have several other grantees. As I was finding, as we were putting this together, I found out about all the different grantees that are using story maps in EPA Region 6, as well as in brownfields in general. So you might even just, Google brownfield story maps and just kind of see who has one and contact them. And most of them are more than welcome. We're more than happy to talk to you about them. And then, as we mentioned in the beginning, repeat performance. So Elizabeth will be doing this webinar again. So if you have questions in between now and then, or you're like, I didn't quite understand how this worked, you are welcome to join in. That's going to be with Microsoft Teams. So we will send out the link, because I'm realizing it just says click here to join the meeting. That's not really going to help you. But we'll send out the link to join that meeting. You don't have to register ahead of time, or you can just call in. Elizabeth, did you want to say anything else about that?
No, hope you can join us, and feel free to invite others, especially those who work on GIS. That way they can get some information from our excellent panel members. So thank you. I'll see you next month.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea, because now you kind of know what's involved. So if you have GIS folks in your organization, maybe you can kind of rope them into the next one and say, hey, can you listen in on me? Can we partner together on this? So will we be sharing the recording? Yes, give us about a week and we'll download it. It'll be posted on the LDEQ YouTube page. We'll also send it out to our speakers if they want to post it anywhere. And we'll send out a link to the recording as well as the link to the how to join the next one, repeat performance on May 18th. All right, thank you all so much for joining us today. We hope this was really helpful. We hope to see a lot more story maps in the future. And please follow up if you have any additional questions. All right, have a good afternoon.